Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So, like Diana said, we're talking about the importance of peer support for suicide loss tonight. And we're just going to we're going to start, looking at grief and suicide loss and how that's a little bit different. And I believe everyone here tonight is a suicide loss survivor. So I just, really want to acknowledge everyone who's here tonight, everyone who's in the quote unquote room together tonight. I just want you to know that this is your community here. We're here in this together, and we're here to support each other. And so that's actually why, it's so exciting to know that that they created this space so we could talk about some of those supports that are available to us. I know some people are probably a little bit closer to the loss. It might have just recently happened to you, and I'm so sorry about that. I know some others have had a little bit of distance, a little bit of space, and are eager to learn a little bit about how they can get involved in this. So we'll get into all of that, but I just first want to echo what Diana said at the beginning, just to make sure that we're prepared for what we're going to talk about tonight. Tonight is not a space for, it's not a support group tonight. We're going to be learning about support groups and learning how to get involved and learning about Healing Conversations, our peer support program at AFSP. So this is a more educational and informational space. So just to be aware, that said, certainly we'll be talking about grief and loss. And so if at any point you're feeling, activated or things are stirring up, I just want to remind you to be gentle with yourself and take some time. If you need to, go ahead and turn your camera off, step away if you need to, and don't feel pressured to stay with us through the whole time. Sometimes we have to take breaks through all of this. So, I just really want to make sure that we're being gentle with ourselves as we honor our loved one and are thinking of them. And I should probably have introduced myself, but you could still see my face. But just to reiterate, my name is Shannon Donick. A little bit about me: I am a suicide loss survivor myself. I lost my grandma to suicide when I was a child about 30 years ago. So definitely shaped my upbringing and shaped my family dynamics. This has been something with me for a while. I've actually been working in this space for a while as well. I am at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, where I'm the senior manager of our loss and healing programs, where I focus on our healing conversation, which is what we'll get to tonight. And before that, I actually worked at a local crisis center as well, where I led support groups and, again, just really worked with our loss survivor community here in New York City, that's where I am. I know you all are in California, but I'm out in New York City tonight. So we'll go ahead and get started here. As we were talking about looking at putting together this presentation for you all, I know we wanted to really kind of acknowledge how grief or suicide loss, how is that different than regular, when you're grieving for someone else? So I'm actually just kind of scooting these boxes around my screen right now for a second so that I can see my slides. But, just even without losing someone to suicide, just simply losing a loved one, we actually know that that is one of the number one stressors in anyone's life. So, just losing anyone I'm sorry, I'm just moving my square around here. We know that experience really just is one of the most painful things you may have to endure in your life. And so we know that automatically just grieving a loved one, whether it's to suicide or not, can actually resemble a lot, can certainly follow a lot of the same patterns. And particularly for suicide loss, it can be very similar to that was sudden or violent or traumatic. You're unexpectedly losing your loved one. You didn't get that chance to say goodbye. You didn't have a chance to mourn in advance. And so a lot of those intense, feelings of yearning are similar. And, and again, no matter who you lose or how you lose someone, you're left to navigate a new normal without that person. So that's sort of where we're looking at how grief across the board is the same. However, what we know is that suicide bereavement is different. And this is actually something that AFSP really has made a priority and really has been supporting for years now, has been supporting a lot of researchers who are looking at how can we identify that suicide bereavement actually is different. Those studies are ongoing, and there needs to be more, and so we're continuing to make it a priority. So we're we don't have all those answers yet, but we do know that we've seen that it can be associated with greater emotional pain, profound distress. Some of the feelings that come up after a suicide, the guilt, the perceived responsibility, thinking that we should have had some control over this, that we should have known, that there may be something that we could have done, the shame and the feelings of rejection or abandonment from our other community members, maybe whether it's a family member feeling that that we no longer belong there, or we're no longer welcome there. These are feelings and emotions that seem to be pretty more specific to suicide, and that is what can really make suicide loss survivors feel isolated. Additionally, and we highlight here some of the specific pain that seems to be, again, specific and unique to suicide loss. Things that come up, emotions that'll come up that were unexpected, like intense anger. You might suddenly be very angry either at your loved one for doing this, or you could feel a lot of anger towards the doctors or lawyers that you were maybe working with. You might actually feel relief, which is something that can be very surprising to many suicide loss survivors, because they may have been watching their loved one struggle for a very long time. And so now they're feeling relieved that their loved one is out of pain. But as soon as they feel relieved, they feel surprised to have felt relief and maybe feel that they weren't supposed to be feeling that. And so that can bring up a lot of confusion as well. And then certainly, suicide loss survivors may now start feeling and experiencing their own thoughts of suicide, which again can be very surprising and doesn't often accompany a death by another way. And so, we highlight these as some of the unique experiences that we know of. Certainly there are many more, but these are those things that can make us feel that our grief is quite distinct, and it can really push a suicide loss survivor to want to find other suicide loss survivors, so that we can feel that someone gets it, that we can feel a little bit less isolated. We can step away for a few moments and not feel that judgment anymore, and not feel that we're being blamed by someone. That and ideally we're looking to find out if some of these feelings can be universal. So again, just knowing that that's really been something that AFSP for I think we've been around for about 35 years now, and that's really been something that we've been trying to find, is help to create those spaces where suicide loss survivors can feel that they belong and feel that we're quote unquote around people that get it. Again, just kind of like what we call Suicide Bereavement 101 is just looking at, again, some of those main topics or questions or emotions that come up over and over that we hear often from suicide loss survivors. And number one is the why question. Really just, we can spend days, weeks, months just ruminating over and over why this would happen, why they would choose to do this. We tend to have, like I mentioned earlier, higher levels of feelings of guilt, blame, and responsibility, just feeling that we should have been able to prevent this in some way. And of course we couldn't have. We can't make anyone do anything, but there's just a sense that we should have been able to do something, particularly, depending on how close we were to this person or how much time we spent together. That's when we can really start to put more and more responsibility on ourselves. And certainly we feel, heightened feelings of rejection or abandonment by that loved one. Like I mentioned, again, that anger might pop up unexpectedly. How could you do this to me? How could you leave me? We work with an incredible psychotherapist that some of you may know. His name is Dr. Jack Jordan. He's actually been instrumental in creating a lot of the programs that we have at AFSP for loss survivors. And the phrase that he uses here is the tyranny of hindsight. So we often will be looking back and expect our past selves to have known what our current self knows. And of course we couldn't have done that, but it feels somehow like we should. So I just, he actually does a training, a 2-day training on just the past 5 minutes that I've been talking. So certainly this is something that we could go much deeper into, but I just wanted to kind of set the tone here tonight of just identifying how we know that suicide loss can certainly be a little bit more amplified, and why we found it really, we made it a priority at AFSP to find and create space for loss survivors to be able to connect with each other. And so that's where I'm here tonight to talk about our Healing Conversations program, which is our personal support for suicide loss. It is a peer-based, volunteer-driven support program. So it's a little bit different than a support group, although we work very closely with support groups, and I know we'll be touching on a local support groups tonight towards the end. But it's this is a one-time meeting between volunteers who are all loss survivors themselves and a typically newer loss survivor, although we're certainly open to speaking with anyone at any point in their loss journey. We're here to welcome survivors where they are, as they are. We want to meet them where they're at in their grief for a meaningful moment of connection. We certainly won't have the answers. Sometimes we actually just will spend most of the time talking with each other, just comparing the fact that we have such similar questions, going over and over, looking for those answers together. But we hope that we can at least, point that loss survivor to places that they might find ongoing comfort. Certainly we could point out places that we found comforting, like support groups that I keep mentioning. We'll be able to share some suggestions for books, films, maybe things that helped us, some self-care coping strategies. This is not a mental health service program here. So that's why one of the things that I think is so great is just showing that as peers, we actually can be, part of the journey and actually start someone on the path forward by simply showing them that they're not alone. We're going to create a space that's safe for someone to open up for the first time, help them realize they're not alone, and hopefully encourage them to look towards finding professional mental health to go along with this. But we actually really believe that there's a lot that we can accomplish here at the peer level. And so a little bit about the volunteers that make up this program. Everyone is over the age of 18. So this program is not for children or teens. We're all adults here, so we meet with other adults. What I think is really neat is that we are able to meet can make connections of suicide loss of any type of loved one. And so that to me is very exciting, just because we know, and we're starting to hear this more and more, of how often folks can feel even more isolated, even within the suicide loss community, because they might see there's a lot of supports out there for parents or children loss or siblings loss or spousal loss. But what about those of losing a cousin or a colleague? We actually are contacted every once in a while by people who lost a coworker to suicide. They're grieving that relationship. That was a strong relationship, someone very meaningful to them, but they don't necessarily feel like they can go, to some of those typical places to find support, because it's not the same type of loss as losing, your spouse of 45 years. So I'm really glad that we have created this space here at AFSP where someone can connect with someone like that. And so, again, we'll get into a little bit more of like what this process looks like in a bit, but for background, again, for these volunteers, we do ask that our volunteers are all at least 2 years removed from their own loss. And part of that is simply because, again, at the beginning, like I mentioned, we're eager to share some coping mechanisms with our loss survivors. And so, for 2 years, that actually gives us some time, and maybe this is what some of you are going through, is just, kind of looking around and experimenting to try to see what is that thing that will help me, feel, where will I see some, almost feel a breakthrough in my own grief, or feel comfort, or feel, connected to someone. So, whether that is like looking into therapy, checking out support groups. Nowadays, it's actually, since the pandemic, we actually see so many support groups going both virtually and in person, which has actually been an incredible, an additional layer of support for so many. And really just gives such a different dynamic. It's actually been really nice to see that many people are able to find something that they couldn't before. And so we also, for 2 years, we actually see that that's about the time frame that people start to feel that they're far enough along in their healing to be able to listen, rather than still feel that urge to get their own words out. And this is also, we're eager, our volunteers here, we're here accepting that we can't provide those answers, right? We already talked about, we're probably comparing the amount of questions we have with each other, but we're here to just, to listen, to create a safe space, and just share what we've found was helpful, share information about what's out there. Honestly, we can at least answer questions about logistics. That's actually something that we talk about a lot, is sometimes the connections that we're making with lost survivors is truly just like helping them, navigate what is out there. What websites do I go to? How do I, if I go to a support group, what does that even look like? I don't know what that would be like to actually walk into a room full of strangers and sit down and start talking. So those are some of the questions we actually can answer. And so, like I said, this is a different experience than a support group. This is a one-time connection between lost survivor and volunteer. And again, like I said, I really like to highlight the fact that this is open to any type of relationship that was out there. If you feel that you had a close connection with someone and you're experiencing grief after losing them to suicide, we're here. We're here for you. We have, at this point, we have over 600 volunteers all across the country, so we can make that connection happen. You'll hear from Bobby in a little bit, who is our Healing Conversations coordinator for our chapter in your area here in Riverside County. So she can talk a little bit about how to get involved with her area. But we do have a whole network across the country at this point where we can really lean on each other and support each other. Again, we're eager to listen. We remember, that's something that all of our volunteers, this isn't something you forget. So even our volunteers who have, experienced a loss 10, 20, 30 years ago, when they're sitting down with that lost survivor, they're able to just remember what it was like in those early days, those first, weeks or months or, year after the loss, and they can really put themselves in that place again. And, they really do want to do the best that they can to help navigate this truly challenging journey. So we consider this a crucial first step in healing. Let me just remind myself where we're going. Yeah, so like I've said a couple times that this is for newer loss survivors, and I say that just because that's what we tend to see. We typically see, I want to say it's something like maybe 60-70% of our requests are actually within the first year. But that's not to say that it absolutely has to be that. If someone is listening right now and is curious and wanted to reach out to have their own conversation, we're definitely here for you. We're actually ready to meet someone whenever they reach out to us, whether it's a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later. It's just that typically we see that it's a newer loss survivor, but we're open to all. And especially it can be helpful to that newer loss survivor. Like I said, we hope to help them see and find some of those other resources that'll be available to them, so that, again, just being able to find a support group in their area, because support groups are such a great place and such a great complement to the work that we do here in Healing Conversations, because with us being a one-time connection, we can then encourage someone to move into a support group where they actually might be able to establish, an ongoing relationship there. I mean, many support groups, at least the couple that I was involved with up here in New York City, we actually had people coming for years. They would just continue to maintain that. And so they really developed some great connections and really wonderful friendships within the support group and within along with the other attendees. So that's a great, that's a great place to establish a connection. So we hope to help meet you at the beginning and point you in that way. It's also just really helpful. It can still be helpful if you've already found your way to a support group and haven't had a chance to have a healing conversation. I encourage you to come on over, because in support groups, you actually, as great as it can be to continue to attend that support group, sometimes it's a little bit, at least again, the groups that I've been a part of, sometimes they can get a little bit busy. And so you might only have a few minutes to share. And sometimes you might actually want to have a little bit more time to talk. And so what's nice about our healing conversation is that even though, again, it's a one-time thing, it's actually a little bit longer. I mean, usually the conversations are about an hour to an hour and a half, but it's not unusual to get talking and start sharing memories of our loved one and actually spend a good 2 hours together, just reminiscing. And so I did put together this little slide here just for us to kind of like help you see a little bit about what we talk about with our volunteers as they're getting prepped before going into a healing conversation, knowing that some of you here tonight might actually be interested in joining. Just to give you an idea, we're really just going to be here for that loss survivor and follow their direction, see where they want to go and in their grief, and really just try to meet them where they're at. We want to, arrive with empathy. First and foremost, again, just honoring that they're here and honoring that they are reminiscing about someone that they loved very much and is not here anymore. And we want to be here to listen to, as much as you want to share. We want to be aware of our tone of speech. We want to be as welcoming as possible. And we want to be validating, because again, as we talked about at the beginning, they may be experiencing some emotions that they really did not expect. Especially we see that with people who have experienced the death of a loved one from a different type, whether it be cancer, even a sudden death. If it was a car accident, they may be feeling now, they may be very surprised by some of the emotions that are being stirred up. And so, we want to, as well as we can, we want to create a safe space for them to speak about that. We really want to try to validate what's coming up. And so our volunteers are encouraged to, if you're talking with a loss survivor and you recognize, something that they're sharing, if they're, sharing an experience that really lands with them and they're thinking to themselves, oh, it was just like that for me. We encourage them to go ahead and say that, so that our loss survivor realizes some of this is universal. Some of this, there is someone who understands that while that grief looks different than you were expecting, you are, again, you've found this place here where you're not alone. And two, everyone grieves in different ways. That's something too that can come up. Again, it comes up in support groups, but it certainly comes up in our healing conversations. This is really important for family members to hear. And again, some of you may be thinking this as well. If this was your experience, if we lose a family member, we often notice that, because we're all individuals, we're going to be processing things in different ways. So, the mom might be thinking and feeling one way, and the dad might be thinking and feeling something totally different. And then, their child, maybe the sibling, something totally different as well. Some people want to talk about it more. Some people don't want to talk about it. Some people want to see pictures. Some people don't want to see the pictures anymore. And so, navigating that, if you're all in the same household, in those cases, we really recommend that each person, if they're available and if they have the time, we recommend, setting up your own conversations. So one person can talk to one volunteer and another person can talk to a different volunteer, so that they can have that space where they can really process their own grief, but even commiserate about how different and how surprised they might be that it's different with different family members. And so, again, just a little bit about what this looks like. We've talked a lot about creating that safe space for the loss survivor to open up about the emotions that they're experiencing. We love to hear memories. We love to like take a few minutes to get to know your loved one, if you're, for as much as the loss survivor is eager to open up about. And certainly though, as the conversation kind of like naturally comes to a close, once we can tell that the loss survivors sort of been able to get out a lot of what they were looking for, then we do always want to send along some resources for ongoing support. And so I realize, on my slides here, you're not able to click on these links. So we will be sending out an email afterwards with all of these links active for you. But first and foremost, we definitely want to make sure that our loss survivors know that they have a place for ongoing support just at our own AFSP chapter. And I know Bobby might talk a little bit more about that. Beyond Healing Conversations, we have lots of different programs, walks, trainings, presentations. There's a lot going on at our AFSP chapters. And I know sometimes, loss survivors might be eager to just learn more about the cause, just learn more, like I was saying at the beginning, learn more about, what kind of research is going on. Just being curious about, everything that we're learning in mental health as a whole. And certainly we want to make sure that our loss survivors are aware of what local support groups are available to them. I know we'll hear a little bit more about that for this area tonight, but also just being aware of some of the mental health community organizations that might be in the area. Sometimes in some communities, there might be like one large mental health facility that actually provides a lot for postvention services and for loss survivors. So it's always good for us to know about that. We do encourage professional therapy because, again, like I said, since we're focused on that peer support here, which we do consider so helpful, we also know that professional therapy is certainly such a helpful component. We know that for suicide loss survivors, we can certainly see things here that that you might not see in other forms of grief, like complicated, or it's actually now called prolonged grief. That some of the, we also know trauma could be associated with, depending on your experience when you lost your loved one, if you were present, may have stirred up some trauma. And so it's really helpful to speak with a professional who can walk you through the more specifics and just really help zero in on some of the treatment that would be available to you that would be totally different than what we were offering. And so I highlighted here, we actually at AFSP, we have a clinician training program where we train therapists to really understand the nuances in some of these unique situations that go along with suicide loss, because unfortunately, they actually don't often learn enough about this when they're in school. And so we want to better prepare them so that they can meet the needs of their loss survivor clients. We do have a list of recommended books and films, so we share that. And I listed a couple of organizations that are nationwide that we tend to lean on, but certainly in your local area, you would be looking at what else is available. But certainly Alliance of Hope is something we're checking out for anyone who hasn't yet. It's actually a great resource for where you can find actually like online chat rooms where you'll be able to meet with other loss survivors. It's a little bit old school, but it's actually really, really wonderful. And TAP's Tragedy Assistant Program for survivors has a very similar program to Healing Conversations for those who have a military connection along with their suicide loss. And then I also listed here our International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day program through AFSP, because that's coming up. The Saturday before American Thanksgiving is International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day, or we call it Survivor Day for short. And so again, I'll make sure that you have the link there. That's coming up. It's worth checking out to see what kind of events might be happening in your area. We also have some online components. And it's just another great way for suicide loss survivors to connect with each other. Here, I just wanted to share, taking a look at the time here, I just wanted to share a little bit of what we hear from loss survivors after they've had a chance to meet with a volunteer. Here, the first one here, sharing my experience with another survivor of suicide loss was a ray of sunshine during some very dark and stormy times. Another one here is that it was so meaningful when she just listened and let me talk about my experience of loss. Afterwards, hearing about her own story gave me strength. So again, and I'm not sure if some of this is maybe resonating with any of you, of just as you're reflecting on your losses, it really can just, sometimes that's all it takes, is just being able to have a space where you can talk. That's something that we hear from loss survivors, is that sometimes it's having to keep it together to manage, logistics for your family, to get the memorial service planned and run around and make sure, everything is taken care of for everyone else. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, it's back to work. And so you didn't really have a space where you could relax, and open up to someone. And so, again, that's just really what we're aiming to do here. So I did want to just kind of talk about the process of, how it might, for anyone who is interested, who might be thinking about wanting to join us. Again, I'll make sure that my contact information is shared with you afterwards in an email. But feel free to just reach out to us if this is something that you're interested in doing. We have, because this is an AFSP program, it's through our local chapters. So we'd want to put you in touch with our local field staff. Certainly Bobby, who again is on this call and we'll be talking in a little bit, she's our local healing conversations coordinator. So she really manages her team of volunteers. She's my main connection as I receive requests that come into our office, and I send them over to her when they're in this area, and she's able to make a match, putting together a volunteer on her team with a loss survivor who's interested in speaking with someone. And the process for us really is just making that, establishing that local connection, introducing you to our local team, as I mentioned here, and then filling out an application form, having a quick conversation by phone with members of our National Loss and Healing Council, which happens to be an incredible group of volunteers who have been with AFSP for years. Some of them have been on our council for, I think, 10, 15 years now. They're all loss survivors, and they are very passionate about this work and very engaged. And they help to advise myself and my colleagues in our loss and healing department at AFSP. So being able to have a moment to chat with them, to just learn a little bit more background, giving them an opportunity to get to know you. And then after that, we have an online training webinar that just kind of goes a little bit more in depth than what I shared a little bit earlier about just, tips to kind of create that safe space, that safe environment, helping the loss survivor to feel that feel that they can relax and share with us, knowing that they're not alone. Establishing ways for us to introduce ourselves so that we can help them know that we are one of those people that gets it. And that's really it. And so I like to say that just because, and actually I should have said this at the beginning, I often introduce myself as someone who doesn't have any letters after their name, because there's really, I am not a clinician myself. I'm not, I have not, gone and done all of the schooling that so many do in this field. But I actually think that means I'm a good person to introduce this program, because I really do believe that that we're able to support each other in so much, just connecting to each other human to human with empathy. Again, I definitely, not to downplay true mental health service in any way. And I think that professional help is so important. But I think that this can be such a great magical place to really help someone feel less alone. And we know how important that is. And finally, I always like to end just acknowledging the importance of self-care. And I'm, again, maybe even some of you might be noticing this tonight. As much as we're speaking educationally, we're still, in this work, we're always thinking about our loved one. We're always honoring them. And particularly in these conversations, we know that we're going to share some of those emotions when we're sitting with someone and we're learning about their loved one. We're hearing about who this person was before they left us. And something else that we do here at AFSP is within the Healing Conversations program, is we really try to create a matched connection as close as we can. Meaning, if the loss survivor, we try to match them to someone else with the same loss type. If possible, if they're similar in age, we try to find that as well. Oftentimes the loss survivor will indicate to us that they'd like to speak to someone of maybe the same faith background, or maybe the same sexual identity, or maybe, something that was specifically going on with their loved one. They might want to match with someone else whose loved one had a similar experience. So when we're having these conversations, we really will be speaking to someone that could be very similar to ourselves. And so we may, find that we're really being activated, and we're really, maybe starting to feel some emotions stir up for ourselves that we didn't expect in these conversations. So self-care is just so incredibly important for us. So I always ask our volunteers, what does that look like for you? And we'd really try to make sure that our volunteers have what we call a self-care plan to follow up after each healing conversation call. We do, I've probably said it now a couple of times. I might have said HC call or healing conversations call. We do have, in the past, we've met in person for these connections. And I know going forward, we probably will start to see that more often, but for the duration of the pandemic, we've really just been doing things mostly by phone or by Zoom. And so that's why I tend to just still say call for shorthand. But we really do, we want to monitor our own loss. We want to monitor our own ongoing grief, just being aware of where we are each day. As time goes on, we've probably all heard or seen the graphic by now that grief is not linear, right? There might be times where you're feeling, everything all of a sudden feels quote unquote easy. And then all of a sudden you might have a day where it really is it's just hard to get out of bed. It's hard to stop crying. It's hard to stop remembering. And so, when needed, we want to check in with ourselves. Do we maybe need to start making more appointments with our therapist? Do we want to go back to our support group? And this is important. Many of our volunteers actually facilitate their own support groups. So we've talked about sometimes it's actually important to go to a different support group, right? So that you can really step into that role of allowing yourself to be cared for rather than caring for the others for a moment. Take your own break from this work. That's something that we really encourage within our volunteers, and we actually see our volunteers doing, which I'm always really proud to see when someone, had the awareness to know, I need some time. I'm just not ready to do this right now. And again, that's why it's so nice to see that our network at this point is just so large that we're really able to support each other when this happens. And so we encourage each other to take breaks when needed. And we really try to lean on our own support system. So within AFSP, we really try to have things set up so that we can debrief with each other. We, have ways of connecting with each other by drop-in calls, team calls, chapter boards, committees. There's a lot of different moving parts where we're trying to be there for each other in different ways. So, I always really encourage our volunteers to, when they're scheduling that call, and they put that on their calendar to speak with the loss survivor, they also, section off a little bit of time after that so that they have time for themselves. And so whatever it is that speaks to them, whether it's, taking a walk, just like hopping outside, maybe like letting your dog run around in the backyard and you can just kind of like, be out there in nature as well. Maybe it's, watching a movie or whatever it is that you need to do to kind of like help you feel like back into this, be encouraged. And so hopefully you can see this. I'll make sure to send this around too. This is our, not sure if you can see the whole part. This is our self-care strategies sheet that we actually share this with loss survivors in some of our follow-up that we leave after the call. But this is something that we lean on as well as staff and as volunteers at AFSP. It's just like kind of like a little, so sometimes when you are just, or at least for myself, sometimes if you're in those moments where you need a break, but you can't even remember what's going to be something that would be a soothing piece of self-care, just refer to this here. I think I love that we've divided it in different categories, because sometimes it can just be like, something as simple as asking someone for a hug. It doesn't even have to be, getting a massage sounds really soothing, but that might, for scheduling, it might not, be helpful. But look at you just being able to take a moment here and thinking about how to be creative, how to give yourself, some time to get back to you. So, that's something I just like to share this as the, it's something that we, like I said, we send to the loss survivors and we use as volunteers here. So I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'm sure there might be some questions, and I'm happy to get a little bit more in the weeds with some of this, but I'm just like moving my own squares around here. So hopefully you all can see my contact info, but like I said, we're putting together an email that we'll be able to send out with all of those links that I mentioned.
Shannon, that was going to be my question. This is Brenda. Like how if a person wanted to sign up for Healing Conversations, how they could, but I see that you have that link right there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So
and I was going to drop it into the chat if that's okay.
That would be wonderful.
I found it. Okay.
Yeah, and we'll follow up. Everyone will get an email from me that includes the slides from today. So you'll have all this information as well as some other local resources. So thank you, Shannon, so much for this presentation. I want to give a few minutes to Bobby, who is our local Healing Conversations coordinator, who wants to share a little bit about her work. And then when Bobby's finished, we also have a representative from Survivors of Suicide Loss, Michelle Madden, who wants to speak a little bit about that is a peer support group. So another option for not only an individual who wants to receive some support, but for those of you that may feel ready to step into a position of giving back and becoming a facilitator of either program, we're here to support that because we do need more of that here in Riverside County. So once they've had a chance to share a little bit more about program, then I want to give a few minutes to Brenda, and Dr. Jen has joined us. I introduced them earlier as our co-chairs for our post-vention group. Give them a few minutes, and then we will make sure that we leave time at the end for other questions that may come up from the group. We'll all be here together for the remainder of the time so that any questions you might have for Shannon, we'll do at that time. Okay, so Bobby, please, welcome.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Bobby Rich, and I am the coordinator for the Inland Empire and Desert Cities chapter of Healing Conversations for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I've been doing this for quite a few years now, I guess, Shannon. I have volunteers. The only one I'm missing today is the loss of a spouse. We have the child. I lost a child in 2003. We're coming up on 19 years. So I'm what's called a long-term survivor of suicide loss. And it is my goal to bring hope to those who have currently or recently lost someone, that you will live through it. It's a long road. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. We take the calls, and I just had one today. It was an hour long. So of course my head is spinning. I haven't done self-care yet. And it brings up everything that you've relived. But this gal was just tremendously grateful. It was a very, very worthwhile conversation. We have the things that Shannon mentioned, the Suicide Loss Survivors Day coming up, but we also have 2 walks coming up in our area. And the Inland Empire will be in Rancho Cucamonga. It's supposed to be October 8th, but I think they're looking for a different date. So we'll keep you posted on that. Our walk out here in Palm Desert is on November 12th. And it will be our first in-person walk since 2019. So we're very excited. I don't know if you have any questions. You can certainly contact me if you know of anyone who needs to talk. we always have an ear, and that's what I'm best at. So I'm not really the greatest talker, but I am a volunteer. This isn't a paid position or anything, but I love what I do. I really do. It's super rewarding. And the word hope is just my motto. I'll share the one thing. I was at a Survivor Day. I think it was my second one, probably in 2014. And we were at a table, and three couples were discussing, or three different people were talking about their losses. And this one gal had just lost her brother. It'd been about 8 months, and she had her son with her, and she had shared. And when I started sharing about my loss, all of a sudden she's just openly sobbing. I mean, she's just really crying. And I stopped and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to upset you. And she goes, oh, no, 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 no. She says, you've just given me hope. She says, I know now that I'm not going to feel like this for the rest of my life. And that just solidified where I belonged in this organization, because it's not so much about, for me, it's not so much about suicide prevention. I know it's all about that, but I look at helping those who have lost someone to know that there is life goes on, and we can at some point honor our loved one by allowing them to work in our lives and help others, whether it be through suicide prevention or loss and healing. It's just goes hand in hand. So anyway, thank you, Shannon, because that was a really great job. Thank you, Diana. And I'm really thrilled to be here and see all these lovely faces and names.
Thank you, Bobby, so much. And we'll make sure to get you all Bobby's information after our time together today. So now I would like to introduce Michelle Madden from Survivors of Suicide Loss. Oh, Michelle, we can't hear you. You look unmuted, but we're not hearing you.
Hear me now?
Yes, great.
Okay. I don't know what's going on with my earbuds. Thank you very much for inviting me today. It is an honor to work with Riverside County. So I'm Michelle Madden. I work for Survivors of Suicide Loss. I was a volunteer. First, I was a loss survivor, and then I was a volunteer, and now I work for them, and I'm their outreach and support director. And part of my job is to help connect that loss survivor to healing and hope. And like Diane, like Bobby was saying, hope is a big deal. And so we run support groups. We currently have 18 support groups online, and our hope is to start some support groups up in Riverside County. We do have one in Menifee, or no, Sun City. And so we do have one there, and our hope is to have some throughout all of Riverside County so that people can have some healing. It is really, for me, one of the saddest moments is when somebody calls and says, I really want to get in a support group, and we say there's nothing. You know, let me do a search, and I can't find anything there for them. One of the nice things about COVID is that we do have online support, and currently that's what we're doing. And even when we go back in person, we're looking to be in person within the next 2 months. And once we do that, we will still have online support groups. And that's, I'm hoping, part of what we want to do in Riverside County too. Have some in person, but also there are some people that don't drive. So that's part of our discussion. So that's what we do. We also have a support line. Like Bobby was saying, people can call and they can talk and they can be on the phone as long as they need. And so we want to give them that hope and healing to move forward, and letting them connect with somebody that understands, where, it's so easy for us to say, oh, I remember when I was there. So I too, like Shannon, have no letters behind my name. I'm trying to figure out some letters to go behind my name, and they're all going to have to do with being a loss survivor. So like loss survivor, life experience, something like that. But we do want everybody to know that there is a place to go and have some hope and some healing, and that you don't need to do this alone. So that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. And so we're, sorry, I thought I was.
Sorry.
If you'll be able to give us your contact information for those virtual meetings. So anyone here that may wish to get some support through a virtual meeting, again, we'll add that to the email.
Absolutely. Well, what I would do, we don't, because our meetings change weekly. And so we do a weekly email. So I'll just have my email. I'll just put my email,
Okay.
and then they can connect with me.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So now I want to give some space to our co-chairs of the postvention subcommittee. These are the ladies that are steering and guiding the work that we're trying to do here in Riverside County to bring all of these supports to our community members. So Brenda, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hello, and my name is Brenda Scott, and I'm on the Behavioral Health Commission, and I heard that they were starting this postvention, suicide prevention committee, and I asked Diane, I'd like to be involved. I am a 2-time suicide loss survivor. I lost my mother to suicide when I was 14, and then my brother when he was 23. And it definitely impacted my life. I didn't have any place to come and talk to someone. I looked for support groups when my kids were like young. I found a support group that they happened to have in Riverside, and it might have been a SOSL support group. I don't know, but I went to it, and I found at that place, it was the very first time I had ever really in front of people that I didn't know shared my story, and then they shared their story. And honestly, it was like the best day. It was very hard, but it was really like the best day of my life for me, because I found people who really understood what I had been through, and I understood what they had been through. And then with this work coming up with the postvention committee, I think it's just so important. And we don't have a lot still here in Riverside County, as Diana said, and Michelle, there's one support group. So I volunteered to become a facilitator. I tried a while back, but it just didn't work out for me to be able to do it. So I've just been really looking forward for many years for us to have more in Riverside County here for suicide loss survivors. So I also volunteer with Healing Conversations, and I have spoke to a few people, and it is so good for them, and to be able to reach out and have someone to talk to. And so I would encourage you, we put the link in there. If you would like to talk to someone in Healing Conversation, I'd like to invite you to click on that link and reach out. And like Bobby said, she's there and she can coordinate for you to be able to talk to someone. So we're just so glad that you're here. And I really want to thank you all for taking the time and being here, and know that, you're not alone. And many of us have been down, that road, and it's not an easy road. And after all these years, I'm not 14 anymore, but, I still feel it. So thank you.
Thanks, Brenda.
Good
Jen.
evening. It's so great here to be here with you in space, especially. I'm so embarrassed. My cats are yelling for dinner. I'm so sorry. You're going to hear cats in the background, and it's real life. I just wanted to just thank several people who are here. I joined Frances at an event she planned in Blythe this weekend. And there was something so meaningful in that moment I want to share with you. And it kind of intersects with something that happened to me in April. I help coordinate 686 Help, one of the oldest suicide hotlines on the West Coast here in Riverside, that has been fully supported for 54 years by what used to be called the Department of Mental Health. And now, because of the advocacy of Diana Gutierrez, it's continued with behavioral health. But I'm also on the board of the American Association of Suicidology and have a loud Siamese. But I wanted to share something that happened in April. I was at the National American Association of Suicidology conference, and I went to this table and I got a sticker that said board member, which felt kind of fancy. And so I put that on, and then I went over to the lived experience table, and there were a bunch of stickers, and I got the one that said attempt survivor, and I put that on. And then I got impacted family and friends because I cared for a loved one for many years who had suicidal ideation. And then I held the loss survivor one, and I said, am I allowed to put this on as a professional loss survivor who lost a student? And I lost a student as an elementary school teacher and then later as a dorm director. And I said, I'll put it on the bottom, because I just, but what was powerful is when I was out with Francis and Peace for Chaos and Blythe, there's sometimes not a clear intersection between loss survivors, attempt survivors, ideation survivors, and Peace from Chaos. What they're doing out there in Blythe is so powerful, bringing together all the lived experience survivors. And so that I just wanted to kind of share that orientation, because I think that's such a great space, because some of us are not just one. Some of us are loss survivors, and like Brenda, who I work closely with, of course, has lost so much more than I have, but some of us are loss survivors and attempt survivors and loss survivors and ideation survivors. So I did want to put in the chat box that I want to remind all the loss survivors, you can call us 24/7 and just say it's a hard day. I miss my son. I miss my brother. I see Karen here from Josh's family. We have some folks who've long-term survivors or recent survivors, and I want you to know that you should reach out too. So don't hesitate to ever call crisis line yourself. I recently called the Veterans Caregiver Crisis Line, and I said, this is so weird because I run a crisis line, but I called and I said, I'm having a tough day with my mom who has dementia, and this is really weird because I run a crisis line. And she goes, it's okay, everyone needs help. And I called, So thank you for being here. Thank you for being in this space. And I just want to acknowledge that some of us have many lived experiences, and everyone is welcome. Please reach out to Brenda and I. We get together, we talk about how we can expand the group, how we can be inclusive, multiple voices. Just let us know how you want to join us. I dropped our information in the chat box. And it's your committee for our community. So don't hesitate to reach out, and we can change it, we can mold it, we can meet your needs. So don't hesitate to reach out to us, and I'll feed the Siamese after. I promise she's not starving. It's just, yeah, she's just laughing.
Terrific, Jen. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you everyone for the information that you've shared tonight. Now we have time for any questions or comments that anyone in the room has for any of the presenters that have spoken tonight. And you can unmute and ask your question, or you can put it in the chat and we're happy to read it out.
Francis, and I didn't see your mom here. I just saw your mom. Hi, Angela. I wanted to recognize and honor you. Francis, you had a question?
Yes. So my question is for everyone that's wanting, I think mainly Michelle, that's wanting to do support groups in Riverside County. I would love to learn how to host and facilitate a support group. I know since starting Peace from Chaos here in Blythe, we've had a lot of people surviving suicide loss and suicide attempts, suicidal ideation. And coming to me and I'm like, we could find some online, but a handful are like, could we do one in person? And like everyone knows, we struggle with that, having the in-person ones. So I'm like, I'm trying to do right now what I can do, and I'll make sure that we get one in person out here soon, even if I have to host it. So I'm glad that conversation happened, because I would love to host one down here in Blythe and also get training on how to, and attend some too, even if I have to travel to Palm Desert or Indio to get my first experiences of doing one. I would love to have that for myself and for my community, because I feel like I could really use a support group too. Do you want to hop on here? 1 second. My mom's here. Let me take this off.
Go ahead, Angela. We can hear
Hi,
you.
everybody.
Go ahead, Angela.
We're so we did start Peace from Chaos, and we're just an advocacy for mental health and suicide awareness. Our son completed, my son completed 11 months ago. So we took on this to start this organization, start trying to help people because we didn't have anybody to help us, and just to make suicide where people can talk about it more, because you know it's taboo. Don't talk about suicide, don't talk about mental health. And so we started telling our story and talking about it, trying to get people to be aware of what's going on and not be embarrassed about it. Let's change that. And so that's what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing, but we're doing it. So that's where we're at. And any kind of training that we can get is, you know, we'd love to. And we're out in a rural area where there's nothing around us. So we are traveling to go to trainings, trying to get as much information we can to share with our community. And we struggle too. We're, you know, we don't have anybody here to help us. So we're the ones helping people, and then we start to struggle. So the self-care is like, we are really big on that. Like, we have to make sure that we take care of ourselves, because every day we're dealing with somebody that's having a mental crisis or wanting to commit suicide, and it's so hard. And we just been, now that we got numbers, we're just been referring them to people, to Jen's group and the 988. And so, yeah, thank you guys for having us, and we look forward to continuing this.
This, you know, Angela and Francis, I just want to tell everyone, Francis and Angela through a suicide prevention event in their rural community that is 100 miles from a hospital. You have to travel 100 miles to have a baby. They threw an event this last weekend, and hundreds of people showed up, and there was a full house for a suicide prevention workshop. It was really, really powerful. So we all want to help you. We're all here to help you. And Brenda and I will meet with you. Shannon, you can give them some input too. Their community is very rural.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. And thank you, Diana, for continuously doing what you're doing. Both of you guys, all of you guys here, now that we've met, all of you guys here.
Great, thank you. Gina.
Yes, kind of a couple of questions. Earlier in the slide presentation, it was mentioned that you needed at least 2 years removed from your own loss to be a volunteer. So that is just strictly for that particular program, because now you're talking about other programs. Because I am a newbie. It happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, thanks for checking in, Gina. For AFSP's program, for the Healing Conversations, it's a 2-year. That's one of our only rules that we have, is that it needs to be 2 years. But like you're hearing from here, there's actually a few different things going on in the local area that you can probably look to get involved in first. And that's actually one of the great ways. You know, there's a lot of different layers of support, and it's actually super exciting to me to be able to hear a little bit more about what you all are doing locally, because I mean, it sounds truly beautiful. I'm so grateful to be here to listen to what you all are doing. So I think that's great. You know, Gina, it looks like there's going to be a lot of different ways for you to be able to get involved. And so, you know, a little bit down the line, if you're still interested in Healing Conversations, it'll be nice to create for you to create a relationship with Bobby now, so that we'll be ready for you a little bit more down the line.
And actually, I want to thank Brenda for telling me about this. And I had no idea, Brenda, when we spoke, that you were in charge of this new thing, and we will be talking.
And Gina, Francis and Angela, they're 11 months out. You're 2 weeks out. Don't go this alone. You know, let other people here support you. Brenda and I want you, when you're ready, if you want to be with us on the postvention group, you are welcome at any time. If you want our support, you can have it at any time. You can call our 686 HELP. I'm pointing it the wrong way again. You can call us 24/7. And I'm going to give you some more resources, but we're just going to try to love on you for a little bit and help you through these first months. And then we can connect you to a family of loss survivors that can continue to love on you on your journey. So I just hope that there are a lot of people here who had to step away to go make dinner or feed the baby or whatever, but this is a very large community and you are not alone.
I did take note that Bobby is a survivor.
Yeah.
Because it was my daughter.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. And there's other parental loss folks here and we'll connect you with them and you can connect with each other and we'll stay in touch. And Francis and Angela are saying that they're here for you. Angela, she lost her son, so they'll be in touch with you. And I'm going to follow up with you. I'd like to speak to you tomorrow. So I'm going to get your information, but just let us love on you and support you. And when you're ready, you're ready.
I put my information at the very beginning in the chat.
Okay. So I'll call you
I've
tomorrow.
gotten so used to online meetings. That's how they take roll, so to speak. So I automatically kind of thought to do that. My phone number and email is there.
Great. Michelle,
And thank you all. This is, and again, thank you, Brenda, for steering me in the right direction, as usual.
I can't hear you, Michelle.
You're breaking up, Brenda.
My email in the chat and send me an email to say that you're on call tonight, and I will send you the list of our support groups each week.
Yeah.
I'll drop it in again.
Yeah, your feed is chopping out right now, Michelle, but I believe that SOSL has the similar rule around being 2 years removed to facilitate peer support groups. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Francis, do you have another question or is your hand still up from earlier?
I think she's going to give Gina some contact information and she'll
Okay.
drop it in the chat box. I knew what she was going to say.
Other questions or comments? Okay, well, this has been a wonderful night together. We are so appreciative of all of you making the time tonight to be with us here. We will follow up with more information, the copy of the slides, how to contact Michelle and SOSL, how to contact Bobby for healing conversations. I will also add in the local helpline's phone number as Jen's been talking about. And if you have any questions or anything that you need, we are all here for you. You all have my email address, so you certainly can contact me and I can make sure to get you connected to anybody that was here tonight as well. So if there aren't any other questions or comments or any final thoughts from our co-chairs, I just want to thank you all for being here tonight and enjoy the rest of your evening. We hope to see you again.